Hey, what's going on, YouTube? Today we're going to have a little fun. Just before we go into the Many Blades One Heart KVK, I thought we'd do a tier list of all the mage heroes. Okay, I generally think we understand how these tier lists work, but there are a couple specific rules I want to go over for this tier list before we get started. And the first is that we only care about these commanders as mage commanders. A few of these heroes are overall heroes and will show up in other marches. Mu here, for example. She often shows up in cav marches. That's great. But for this tier list, we only care about her as a mage commander. The second thing is that some of these heroes have additional like support uses, niche uses, and the fact that they might not be whatever they are on the open field, if they have a niche use, a support use, it might bump them up, a tier or two, depending on how important that niche use is. So we'll start with the epic heroes real quick, and we'll start with Walder. Back in season one, we used to say that Walder, he's the epic hero that performs like a legendary. I think that was always a lie, but you can understand why we said it. If you look at Walder's toolkit, it seems like it should be very strong, right? He hits 4 targets, that's the best there is. He doesn't do a ton of damage, I mean, he's an epic hero. But he also puts a debuff on the target, so you think, hey, he's doing AoE damage, it's putting a debuff on all these targets, he has some frost synergy with Valen, he's probably pretty good. The thing is, he's not. If you kind of read his story, you figure out that Walder, it's implied he's a heavy drinker. And in my head canon, I think that's accurate because this idiot always seems like he's drunk when he goes out in the battlefield. He frequently ends up separated from my other marches by like 20, 30 feet, and he's quickly getting, singled out and killed. He gets ghost faced so easily, so I'm putting him on the C tier, even if his skills suggest he should be B tier. Next we got Alduin. I'm sorry, Alduin, you're kind of emo trash. His skills just don't do enough damage. His debuff just isn't that impressive. At where we are in the game right now, I don't think there's any real good reason to use Alduin in your mage marches. Okay, by comparison, we have Atheist. Now, Atheist only hits a single target, and he hits like a wet paper bag. It's kind of depressing. But Atheist's support rolls are really impressive. Okay, first of all, he flies. So if you want to run flying marches like Flying Celestials, you have very few options, and Atheist is a very good option for that. Second, he gives you 20% movement speed from his skills. So if you're worried about movement speed, Atheist is very good, sort of balancing out your movement speed, making things work. Third, he's a rage generation machine, right? His skills generate like really good rage. And so if you're in a scenario where you don't care about hitting the target very strong, but you want to get the rage skill off as much as possible, Atheist is probably your best choice. And for those reasons, I think Atheist is in the B tier, albeit at the bottom of the B tier, okay? Next we have Tara. The idea behind Tara, obviously other than a gathering hero, was that she kind of gives an AoE buff. And people thought, hey, maybe I'm playing League of Order and I'll send out 3 or 4 Celestials and 1 unit of Vestals to buff the other marches. And my unit of Vestals will include Tara because she'll give an AoE buff. It was a nice idea. The thing about it, her buff's not very good. The rest of her toolkit, the part that's not focused on gathering just isn't very good. You can get the buff from their sources. She's trash. Okay, finally we got Selûne. Selûne's a lot like Atheist. Doesn't hit very strong, but she's an epic hero. She flies. She gives 20% movement speed. She doesn't have the rage generation though, so I do think she is inferior to Atheist when it comes to mage marches, but I will put her above of Walder on the C tier. Okay, now we turn to our real strong heroes, starting with, of course, with Lilia. Been in the game since the game started. Super strong. Long time we would have called Lilia the strongest mage out there. Not true anymore, but she's still super strong in the game. Her AoE is great, and AoE is just getting more and more important as time goes on. The other thing about Lilia is that, the upcoming season, we have the mastery skills back, which allow you to change out one skill on certain heroes. She's got a peacekeeping skill. That's like an obvious thing you don't want anymore, so you can change that out, make Lilia even stronger. I have her at the A tier and really at the top of the A tier. Now our good old running buddy Valen, he's kind of fallen off a bit. I use him still in my mage marches, mostly because there's no better option. He does good AoE, and he does give you a movement speed buff, so that's nice. But his toolkit just isn't very impressive anymore, and a lot of people like break up Lily and Valen and put Lilia with Thea, and I do think that is a stronger option. if you can spare Thea, and I'll talk with her in a little bit. I have Valen sort of clinging to the B tier. I do think he still is viable, but like you can see, like his end of days are coming. I think when the G5 mages come out, he's going to end up getting benched unless he gets a buff like sort of the reliquary system or something like that. Okay, we have a few overall heroes in season one. The first I'll start with is Hask. Um, Look, I think Hask has a good use case when you use him with archers or when you use him with infantry. With mages, his kit just doesn't work very well. I find him very underwhelming. I don't think he should be used with mages. I actually think these other epic heroes are a better choice with mages. So I'm putting him for mages on the C tier. Okay. On the other hand, our other general hero, Thea, super strong. Okay. First of all, she flies, so that's great. If you want to fly in Celestial March, Thea is almost certainly going to be in your flyers. Her shield is really good. It's always been really good. It builds skill damage. And as we had to fight more and more infantry, more and more Kumas, more and more counterattack damage to you, the shield has gotten more and more important. It keeps your mages, like healthy and strong, even when they're hitting that infantry from long distance. The other nice thing is that Thea, if you have her awakened and she's a Generation 1 hero, it's not that tough to have her awakened by this point. She'll give her shields to Nilgar marches. So I think she's really good. I have her on the A tier just behind Lilia. Okay, and I have her out of order here, but I'll take Indus right now. The use case for Indus is that she puts a debuff on whatever target she's hitting that makes the target take additional damage, not just from her, but from all other marches. Pretty limited niche case. Sometimes I'll see people trying to like debuff or rally or something with Indus. I think it's okay. It's never been particularly strong, but it's not worthless. So I don't have her trash tier. I have her C tier, but for the most part, I use her as a gatherer, not a mage commander. All right, turning to our Generation 2 heroes. Let's start with Tohar here. Now, Tohar, single target damage, doesn't have a rage skill, but cares about skill damage a lot. He's really interesting in that his awakening skill is really important for him. If you don't have him awakened, he's pretty poor. If you do have him awakened, he's just okay. Now, the other thing about him is he is a garrison commander, and his garrison skills has got buffed a lot recently. So he is a pretty viable garrison commander if you're a player that has mostly mages. And so for that, I'm going to bump him up a bit. I think he's in B tier ahead of these other heroes. Okay, after Tohar, we got his running buddy, Bert. Bert, it was sort of your single target mage DPS leader for a long time, and that's wow, that's something I don't really care about. When I'm fighting mages, I mostly want to do AoE damage. There are very few circumstances when single target mage DPS is important. Now he does good damage to that single target, so that is something. His artifact, the Shadow Orb, is very strong, and he does fly, so if you're running flying marches, he is a commander you're gonna use. So I have him still in the B tier. His days aren't done yet, but he's sort of getting towards the end of his days. I do have him above his running buddy, Tohar, though. Now, when later on in the game, we got some new generic heroes, and they classify them as G2, so I'll talk about them here. The first one is Bayhorn. The deal with Bayhorn is he's designed to work with any type of troop, which is great, except for the fact that he's designed to work with any type of troop means he's not particularly strong at any one time. Okay, now he does fly, so if you're running Celestials, he is a good march for that. He hits AoE, although for a legendary hero, his AoE is pretty weak. He's okay. If you're flying, you want to use him. If you keep him on the ground, I think you have better options, right? So if we were specifically talking about just ground marches, I think Valen is clearly better than Bayhorn. But because Bayhorn has that additional viability, I'm going to bump him up all the way up here, just behind Bert. Okay, the other generic hero, that's Mu. There was a time in the game when I considered Mu Thea to be the strongest mage march in the game. I don't think that's true anymore, but I still think Mu is a very good mage commander. Now, she's defensive in nature. She heals a lot. She doesn't take a ton of damage. But she doesn't do as much AoE damage as some of these other heroes, but I still think she is very strong over time. Very good for mage gameplay, provided you pair her with a good other defensive commander. All of which is a long way of saying I think Mu is an A-level commander, but behind these other two. Okay, let's turn to the Generation 3 commanders. I, like many people, was fairly disappointed in the Generation 3 commanders when they came out, and I still am today. I think Thunderlin is clearly the better of the two. She does a ticking dot on her target, which has a chance to hit other targets. So we'll call that AoE, and that is important for mages. Her dot, does pretty good damage. She puts a pretty good debuff on the target. And also the debuff itself has an important role in that it prevents anyone with the debuff, they can't enter a city, they can't enter a rally, they can't enter a bastion. So when you're fighting city hoppers or when you're doing the rally garrison fight and trying to prevent your enemy from getting reinforcements, she is very good at that. She has a sort of a specific, unique role that she performs better than anyone else. And earlier I was talking about Atheist helping sort of, rage generation mechanics. When you're in scenarios where you don't necessarily want to do much damage, you just want to get the rage cycle off as much as you can. I specifically have like an anti-city hopper, anti-reinforcement march built, and it's Thundolin Atheist, right? And it doesn't do a ton of damage, but its rage cycle goes off very frequently, so I can get that debuff on the target, right? So for that reason, I think she is sort of the top of the B tier. Her running buddy, Thalia, Goat Girl, not great. Now, Thalia does have an increased use lately because Young Ming makes Thalia work very well, but I'll talk more about that when I get to Young Ming. Thalia herself has always been underwhelming. Basically, any march I've put her in other than Young Ming has always underperformed. I've always been underwhelmed by it. Now, Thalia does have one redeeming characteristic in that she is the only rally leader for mages right now. Generally speaking, mage rallies aren't a good thing, but right now, in particular with all the infantry rallies, especially the Kuma rallies, people want to try and match strength against weakness, so mages against infantry, and it works okay. I understand what they're thinking. I don't really have a better option, though. And Thalia is the commander for those rallies, so it's not an amazing rally, but it's an okay rally. And so for that purpose, I will keep her on the B tier. When I do ground marches, I always use Valen before her, so I'm going to keep it like that. But because she does have that rally role, I'm keeping her here. Now, here's the thing. The Generation 5 mages should come out, a few months from now. They will include a rally leader. They'll probably be much stronger than Goat Girl. And when that happens, I could easily see Thalia going from B tier to trash tier overnight. Okay? But for now, keeping her at the bottom of B tier. Okay, Young Ming, C tier. No, I'm not gonna hide the ball. He's the best mage in the game. By far, not even close. Young Ming Grimora, I think that is the best mage march. But if you don't use Grimora, you can use Thea, or you can use Thundolin, or you can use Thalia, or you can use Bert, or you can even use Valen, right? I wouldn't be surprised if there's other marches that work well with him. Basically, it seems like Young Ming plus any mage is the best mage march in the game. He is super strong. His mechanic hits multiple targets, does a ton of damage. It's great because if you're like going back and forth, he can hit at the beginning of combat. He doesn't need to wait for the rage cycle to build up. He's clearly the best mage in the game. I don't think there's any question about that right now. Okay. And finally, I got Grimora. Compared to Young Ming, she's kind of a disappointment. She's not terrible, but she's just not nearly as strong as Young Ming. She hits one target. She hits it very strong, so that's nice. She also buffs the skill damage of her march by a lot. And I do think Young Ming Grimora is the best pair, is the best mage march. But you don't have to put, her with Young Ming. You can put a lot of other people with Young Ming. But if you break them up, what I find is that Young Ming still kicks ass, and then Grimora and whoever does okay. Not terrible, just okay. And so for that reason, I have her on the B tier, at the top of the B tier, but just B tier. All right, and that's where I have the mages right now going into the new KVK, right? Obviously, your mileage might vary. You might have some discrepancies here, but this is where I see them. And if you disagree, let me know in the comments below. And until next time, you stay classy, Belleron.